Disappearance is not always a vanishing act. It is often a quiet recalibration of the self. People rarely erupt into absence. Instead, they erode. Their presence thins out like fog under morning light, until you're left with an empty room and an echo. You don't always notice when they begin to go, but eventually, you feel the chill they leave behind. This withdrawal is not laziness or neglect. It is a psychological boundary, silently drawn. As Carl Jung suggested, the unconscious knows when something is misaligned. When the outer world demands more than the soul can give, the psyche retreats, not out of malice, but as an act of survival. To become emotionally or energetically unavailable is to say, I will no longer bleed where I am not seen. Their silence isn't a void, it's a statement. It is presence in another form, a metaphysical boundary, a mirror held up to the chaos of modern relationships, where overstimulation masquerades as connection. Often, the fading of someone is more powerful than their voice ever was. It compels reflection. It forces us to ask, what did we take from them that they could no longer give? And perhaps most importantly, it's not about you. It's not rejection. It's not punishment. It's a self-rescue. A soul choosing itself over the performance. A conscious refusal to fragment any further. Disappearing, then, is not escape. It is the first step toward integration. Section 1. Psychic energy and emotional economics. You only have so much psychic energy to give, and most people are spending it like it's infinite. Carl Jung believed that psychic energy, like physical energy, flows where attention goes. But here's the tragedy. You've been conditioned to offer your presence as if it's a public utility, available at all times, to anyone who calls. Every text you answer instantly, every emotional burden you shoulder without reciprocity, every conversation you stay in just to avoid discomfort, costs you. There is no refund for being over-available. And the more you extend yourself, the more they begin to expect your availability as a given, not a gift. When you're too emotionally open, you become easy to access, but hard to value. You're drained, and they're full. You're burned out, and they think you're just quiet. There's a reason your exhaustion feels existential. Your psychic fuel is being funneled into people who don't even realize they're consuming it. They don't see the toll it takes. Because when you give without boundaries, you teach others that your energy has no cost. And in a world where convenience often trumps depth, they'll keep taking as long as you keep offering. But here's what Jung would warn you. Anything that drains your psychic energy without meaning pushes you further away from individuation, your path toward becoming whole. You can't evolve while being consumed. The self can't emerge if it's perpetually diluted. Your psyche begins to fragment, your thoughts grow cloudy, and your emotional availability turns into a performance. You show up, but not as yourself. You start living through the persona, your mask, offering pieces of yourself that no longer reflect your truth. And it leaves you haunted by a question you're too tired to ask. Who am I when I'm not being used? In the economy of energy, you are not bankrupt. You are mismanaged. Time and attention are the new currency of identity. They shape your reality, form your values, and influence your psychological direction. If your energy is always flowing outward, toward people who offer no return, then your inner world becomes a ghost town. There is nothing noble about being emotionally available to everyone. Jung's concept of individuation demands a withdrawal from the collective, a return to the self. That doesn't mean disappearing in bitterness. It means consciously choosing where your energy goes. Protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's strategic. When you finally become unavailable to what drains you, you become radically available to what awakens you. That's not avoidance. That's alchemy. That's how transformation begins. Not by offering more, but by finally withholding. When you shift your psychic investments, something startling happens. They notice, and they react. But how they respond to your boundaries reveals everything about their relationship to your presence. That's where the deeper unraveling begins. And that's what we'll explore next. Section 2. The persona, the shadow, and projection. They didn't fall in love with you. They fell in love with the version of you that always said yes. The one who answered calls in the middle of your own crisis. The one who never said no. The one who played the part they unknowingly assigned you. That's the persona. A social mask designed to be liked, accepted, and needed. Jung warned that over-identification with the persona leads to soul fragmentation. You perform who you think you should be, and in doing so, you abandon who you truly are. But the moment you stop being endlessly available, the performance ends. You break the contract they never admitted existed. That unspoken agreement that said, "You will meet my emotional needs, even at the cost of your own." When you pull away, it's not just your silence that unnerves them. It's the void left behind. They're not angry because you're gone. They're angry because now they're alone with themselves. And in that silence, their projections echo back. Your absence reveals the hollowness of their expectations. You were never just a person in their lives. You were a screen onto which they projected unresolved needs. They needed a caretaker, so you became one. They wanted validation, so you gave it. They feared abandonment, so you overcompensated. But none of that was love. It was shadow work in disguise. Jung believed that people often relate not to who you are, but to the archetype they unconsciously cast you as. And when you disrupt that story, when you withdraw from the role, they resist, they attack, they retreat. But beneath that chaos is a deeper confrontation. They are now face to face with the parts of themselves they've disowned. You were the light keeping their shadow at bay. Now that you've stepped back, the dark rises. That's the cost of reclaiming yourself. You don't just free your energy, you force others to meet their own reflection. And most people aren't ready for that kind of mirror. You, on the other hand, begin to feel something strange. Liberation laced with grief. Because as you dismantle the persona, you start to notice how deeply entangled your identity had become in being needed. The pain isn't just from losing people. It's from realizing how much of your self-worth was built around fulfilling roles. You weren't living. You were performing survival. But now, your unavailability becomes a kind of exorcism. You are casting out the false selves, one boundary at a time. It's a lonely process, but it's also sacred. Because this is the space where individuation takes root, not in the noise of approval, but in the quiet rebellion of self-return. And just beyond this sacred withdrawal is the truth that hurts the most and heals the deepest. They never really knew you. They only knew what they could get from you. But now that you've shattered the illusion, what remains? A confrontation far more intimate than any relationship, the one between you and your unlived life. And that's exactly what we're about to step into. Section 3. Individuation through boundaries and silence. You aren't punishing them. You're returning to yourself. That's the difference between ego-driven withdrawal and soul-aligned solitude. When you begin pulling back, setting boundaries, and falling silent, it's not to hurt anyone. It's to listen, to feel where your energy ends and theirs begins. In Jungian psychology, this withdrawal isn't abandonment, it's individuation. It's the slow and sacred act of reassembling your psyche from the fragments that have been scattered across people's expectations. Boundaries aren't walls to keep others out. They are mirrors showing you where you've disappeared in the name of connection. When you stop explaining, stop defending, stop oversharing just to be understood, your silence becomes a mirror too. And that mirror is uncomfortable, not because it's cruel, but because it's honest. People don't just react to your boundaries. They react to what your boundaries reveal about them. Their entitlement, their dependency, their lack of self-regulation. And when they can't access you like they used to, they're left with the truth they've avoided, that maybe they never learned to face their own emptiness. Your silence is not just yours. It echoes inside them too. They call it coldness. You call it integration. Because something extraordinary happens in the quiet. The noise of false obligations dies down. The inner chorus of people you've tried to please your whole life goes mute. And for the first time, you hear a new voice, your own. Not the persona, not the projection. You. Silence becomes not the absence of sound, but the presence of self. And that self no longer bends for every emotional current or compromises its center to be seen. Your availability had become a currency in relationships that were emotionally bankrupt. Now, by becoming scarce, you increase your value, not in an egoic way, but in an existential one. You're no longer trading pieces of yourself for temporary closeness. You're protecting your wholeness so it can finally emerge. The paradox is brutal and beautiful. To become truly available to your life, you must first become unavailable to the noise that once defined it. And what happens when that true self fully steps into the light? That's the final truth we must face, where all this withdrawal, silence, and boundary setting leads. Let's go there now.